My mother forgot my birthday for the third year in a row. Not by accident. Not because she was overwhelmed. Not because life got in the way. She forgot it while standing 10 feet away from me in my parents' kitchen, smiling so hard her cheeks looked tight, holding a bakery cake with my younger brother's name piped across it in blue frosting. I had just walked in carrying 2 grocery bags and a bottle of wine I'd picked up on the way from the airport. I remember the exact sound in the room. My brother laughing, my mother clapping, my father telling him to stand near the window because the light was better for pictures. They were celebrating his latest milestone online, another wave of followers, another viral video, another excuse to act like he had personally cured a disease instead of posting reaction clips from his apartment. And me, I was standing there on my own 33rd birthday like unpaid event staff. Nobody looked at me twice. Nobody said happy birthday. Not my mom. Not my dad. Not even my brother, who glanced at me long enough to say, "Can you put those bags down quietly? We're filming." That was it. That was the moment something in me went cold. Not loud. Not dramatic. Cold. I set the grocery bags on the floor, smiled the kind of smile women learn when they've spent their whole lives swallowing disappointment, and said, "Don't let me interrupt." Then I turned around and walked out of the kitchen while they kept singing to him. By midnight, I had done something my family never imagined I would do. I bought myself a $95,000 Tesla in cash. No financing. No cosigner. No family opinion. No permission. I didn't post a rant. I didn't call anyone. I didn't send some emotional text begging them to care. I just took a screenshot of the purchase confirmation and uploaded it to my private Instagram story. The one I knew my family watched in silence, even though they never liked a single thing I posted. No caption. Just the car. The total. My name. The next morning, my father called before 8 a.m. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't remember my birthday then either. His first words were, "Where did you get the money for a $95,000 car?" And then, in the tightest voice I had ever heard from him, he said, "We're having a family meeting tomorrow night. Be here." I stared at my phone after the call ended and realized something that surprised even me. I wasn't nervous. I was done. Have you ever sat in a room full of people who were supposed to love you and realized they only saw you when they needed something? Like you weren't a daughter or a sister or a person at all. Just the dependable one. The easy one. The one who could be overlooked because she'd survive it. That had been my role for so long I almost didn't notice how much it was costing me. But by the time my father demanded that family meeting, I already knew something they didn't. The car was the smallest part of what was coming. I lived in Seattle and worked as a senior operations director for a digital health company that had just been acquired by a much larger firm. 4 years, I had built my life the way some people build shelters in a storm. Fast, practical, and mostly alone. I worked insane hours in my 20s, paid off debt, kept my head down, and learned how to make myself useful in every room I entered. My parents loved to tell people I was the responsible one. It sounded like praise if you didn't know our family. In our house, responsible meant self-sufficient. Self-sufficient meant low maintenance. Low maintenance meant ignorable. My younger brother, Ryan, was the opposite. Ryan was creative. Ryan was sensitive. Ryan was meant for more. Every bad decision he made was recast as courage. Every unpaid bill was a temporary setback. Every impulsive choice was part of his process. When I was 22 and told my parents I needed a second job to cover rent, my mother told me, "That's what builds character." When Ryan was 22 and couldn't cover rent because he had spent too much on camera gear and a loft studio, my father said, "He needs space to create." That was our family in one sentence. I wish I could tell you the birthday thing was the first time it hit me. It wasn't. It was just the first time I stopped explaining it away. A few weeks before that trip, I had been cleaning up old accounts and subscription payments when I noticed something strange on a savings account I hadn't looked at in years. It was technically an account my parents had helped open when I was younger, tied to some family planning money and legacy funds for my grandparents. I had assumed it was long closed or inactive. Instead, there were old transfers I didn't recognize. One of them was for $11,800. The recipient name included my brother's media company. At first, I honestly thought it had to be a mistake. Some clerical thing. Some bookkeeping mess. Something my father had moved around for taxes and forgotten to mention. But after my birthday, After standing there while they celebrated him and treated me like a piece of furniture, that transfer came back into my mind and stayed there. That night, after I bought the Tesla, I opened my laptop and went looking. Years earlier, I had helped my parents organize their digital records. They were terrible with passwords, cloud storage, file naming, all of it. I had set up a shared family folder back when I was in grad school because my mom kept losing tax forms and my dad couldn't remember where he saved anything. They never changed the access settings. What I found in that folder made my stomach drop. Statements, tax documents, loan agreements, wire confirmations, insurance forms. At first I skimmed, still half hoping I was overreacting. Then I opened a PDF with a name, so bland it almost slipped past me. Education Fund Closure Authorization. My name was on it. I clicked. My grandparents had started a college and graduate education fund for me when I was 10 years old. They were proud people, careful people, the sort who believed education was the one thing nobody could take from you. I knew the fund existed. I also knew I had been told, years earlier, that market changes and family circumstances had reduced it to almost nothing. That wasn't true. The document showed the account had been emptied, not by me, by my parents, transferred in full, through a series of distributions, into business and personal accounts connected to Ryan's company. I just stared. I remember not breathing right for a second. Then I opened another file, and another, and another. Equipment reimbursement, studio lease support, travel and event expenses, emergency creative operating funds. All of it came from money that had either been designated for me, held under accounts associated with me, or moved through structures my grandparents had intended for my education in early adulthood. Thousands here, thousands there, over and over. Every sacrifice I had made in my 20s flashed through my head, so fast it made me dizzy. The apartment I rented with peeling cabinets because I couldn't justify nicer. The graduate program I postponed because I needed to be realistic. The years I bartended on weekends while working full-time during the week. The time I called my mother crying because I couldn't afford tuition for the master's program I had gotten into, and she said, "Sweetheart, not everyone gets to chase every opportunity. You have to be practical. Practical." Meanwhile, they were using my fund so my brother could buy drones and lighting packages. I wish that were the worst part. It wasn't. There were message backups in the same cloud account. Old synced conversations. Fragments, mostly. Enough to show the pattern. Ryan complaining that he couldn't create under financial pressure. My mother telling him they'd figure it out. My father saying they could move a little from Claire's side because she's stable. My mother replying once with a sentence I still remember word for word. "She's doing well enough already. He needs us more." That line sat in front of me like something alive. She's doing well enough already. You know what's ugly about family favoritism? It doesn't always look like open cruelty. Sometimes it looks like logic. Sometimes it sounds reasonable. Sometimes it hides behind words like need and support and help. And if you're the one who functions well under pressure, people slowly start treating your strength like a community resource. My success became their excuse. My stability became their permission slip. And my brother's chaos became the center of the universe. I closed the laptop and walked to my window. It was after 1 in the morning. Seattle was wet and quiet, headlights sliding across the street below. I remember looking at my reflection in the glass and thinking, this is not about the money anymore. The money mattered, but what it revealed mattered more. The next day I called the only person I trusted enough to tell the whole truth. My best friend, Naomi. Naomi and I had met when we were both junior analysts, two exhausted women surviving office politics and vending machine dinners. She knew my family dynamic well enough to understand the shorthand. We met for drinks that evening at a rooftop place near downtown. I brought printouts. She took one look at my face and said, "What happened?" By the time I finished explaining, she leaned back in her chair and said, "They stole from you." I shook my head automatically, the way people do when they've been trained to soften their own pain. "It's more complicated than that." "No," she said. "It feels more complicated than that because they're your family. But if anyone else had used money set aside for your future without your knowledge, you would call it exactly what it is." I looked down at my drink. She was right, and I hated that she was right. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet." "You're lying." I exhaled. "Okay. I know one thing." "What?" I already bought the Tesla. She blinked. You what? I turned my phone around and showed her the purchase confirmation. Her mouth fell open. Then she laughed so hard she almost snorted. Claire. Oh my God. Your father is going to lose his mind. He already called a meeting. Of course he did. I wrapped both hands around my glass. I didn't do it just to upset them. I know. I wanted the car. I can afford it. I've wanted it for a year. I know. But I'd be lying if I said part of me didn't also want them to see it. To see that I built a life they know nothing about. To see that I'm not the broke, struggling, maybe she needs guidance daughter they still picture. Naomi nodded slowly. That's not petty. That's exposure. We sat there for a while talking through scenarios. Could I take legal action? Probably, depending on the structure of the accounts and the documentation. Did I want to? I didn't know. Did I want an apology? Yes. Would an apology be enough? No. What do you actually want from that meeting? She asked finally. I thought about it. I want them to stop telling themselves a story where this was acceptable. And if they won't, then I stop participating in the family version of me. She smiled sadly. There she is. That night I went home and organized everything. I printed bank statements and transfers. I labeled tabs. I highlighted dates. I pulled the messages. I made a simple spreadsheet showing the totals and timeline. I also scheduled a consultation with an attorney, more to understand my options than to start a war. When you spent years being minimized, paperwork becomes weirdly comforting. Facts don't blink. Receipts don't gaslight you. Numbers don't ask you to keep the peace. 2 days later, I picked up the Tesla. The delivery center smelled like fresh leather, rain on concrete, and somebody's expensive cologne. It should have been a fun day, and in a way it was. But it also felt symbolic, like I was stepping into a version of my life I had earned but never fully allowed myself to enjoy. The car was gorgeous. Deep metallic gray. White interior. Clean lines. Quiet power. It looked nothing like the way my family still saw me. The sales advisor walked me through everything, but I barely heard him. I kept thinking about pulling into my parents' driveway. I kept seeing my father's face. First electric, he asked. First one that's entirely mine, I said. He smiled politely, not knowing how much that sentence meant. On the drive home, the silence inside the car felt unreal. No engine noise. No clutter. Just my thoughts and the road and the strange sensation of moving forward without friction. For years, I had been the one who adjusted, the one who tolerated, the one who translated my family's behavior into something easier to live with. That drive was the first time it hit me that I didn't have to do that anymore. The morning after I picked it up, my mother called. No hello. No warmth. No mention of my birthday. Your father got an insurance notification about a new vehicle. I said nothing. A Tesla? Yes. For $95,000? Yes. The silence on her end sharpened. Claire, where is that money coming from? My job. Don't be sarcastic. I'm not being sarcastic. My job. You expect me to believe you had that kind of money just sitting there? I don't need you to believe it. It's true. Her voice changed then. Less outrage. More fear. Are you in some kind of trouble? It almost would have been funny if it weren't so insulting. The only way she could explain my financial independence was criminal activity. No, Mom. I'm successful. She let out a breath through her nose. Your father wants this discussed in person. I know. I'll be there. There was a pause. Then she said, in that wounded tone mothers like to use when they want to sound innocent, we worry about you. I looked at the folder on my table, at the evidence that they had not worried about me in any meaningful way when it counted. I'm sure, I said. The flight to Dallas felt longer than it was. I rented nothing. I wanted to arrive in my own car, under my own name, using money I had earned myself. I had the Tesla transported ahead and picked it up from a delivery point nearby. Maybe that sounds dramatic. Maybe it was. But after years of being made small, I was no longer interested in arriving quietly to make other people comfortable. Their neighborhood looked exactly the same. Same trimmed lawns. Same brick facades. Same sense of suburban order that always felt more important to my parents than emotional honesty. When I turned onto their street, my palms went damp on the steering wheel. Ryan's SUV was already in the driveway, covered with decals for his channel and a giant custom wrap that made it look like a sponsored deal nobody had actually paid for. I pulled in behind it and stopped. For a second I just sat there. Then the front door opened. My mother stepped out first. Her eyes went straight to the car. She froze, hand still on the screen door, taking in the logo, the finish, the fact that it was undeniably real. "You actually bought it," she said when I got out. "I did. With cash." "Yes." She stared at me as if I had suddenly started speaking another language. My brother came out next, phone in hand as usual. "No way," he said. "Whose is this?" "Mine." He laughed. "Seriously?" "Yes. That's insane." "It is a little." He circled the car once, half impressed, half suspicious. "What? Did your company give you a crazy bonus or something?" "Something like that." My father came out last. He didn't look at me first. He looked at the Tesla, then at the house, then back at the Tesla like he was trying to solve an equation that refused to balance. "Inside," he said. No greeting, no hug, no acknowledgement that he had not even called on my birthday until he saw a luxury vehicle attached to my name. Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee. Nothing had changed. Same beige sofa, same decorative bowls nobody touched, same family photos on the mantel, most of them featuring Ryan in one accomplishment pose after another. A few of mine were there too. Graduation, one old recital, a corporate headshot my mother once said made me look intimidating. We sat in the living room. I put the folder on the coffee table. My father leaned forward, forearms on his knees. "We're concerned." That word again. He went on. "A purchase like that raises questions." "Questions for who?" "For us. For your family." I almost laughed. "My car purchase raises questions for the people who emptied my education fund." The room went still. My mother blinked fast. My brother frowned. My father's expression hardened, but his eyes changed first. That's how I knew he knew exactly what I was talking about. "What did you say?" he asked. I opened the folder and slid the first document toward him. He looked down. My mother leaned in. Ryan stared at both of them, confused. For a few seconds nobody spoke. Then my mother said, very softly, "Where did you get this?" "From the cloud folder I built for you. The one you forgot I could still access." My brother sat back. "What is that?" "It's the closure paperwork for my graduate fund," I said. "The fund Grandma and Grandpa set up for me. The one I was told had basically evaporated." My father cleared his throat. "That was years ago." "Yes," I said. "So was my birthday yesterday, but apparently time only matters when it protects you." "Claire," my mother started. "No, we're not doing that today." I laid out the rest of the documents one by one. Transfers, wire receipts, business expenses, messages, amounts highlighted in yellow. Ryan picked up one page, frowned, and said, "Why is my company name on this?" I looked at him. "Because your company was funded with money that was supposed to support my future." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" My father straightened. "You are misunderstanding a very complicated situation." "Then explain it." He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "At the time, there were family pressures. Your brother's work was unstable. You were already established. We believed. You believed I'd survive being sacrificed. That is not what happened." "Really?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you decided I was competent enough to rob quietly." My mother flinched. "Don't use that word." "Why? Does it sound worse out loud?" Ryan tossed the paper down. "This is insane. They helped me out a few times." "So what? That's what families do." "Not with money that isn't theirs. It was family money. It was money set aside for me." He rolled his eyes. "You turned out fine." There it was. The sentence I had heard in different forms for half my life. "You turned out fine. You're strong. You didn't need as much. You're okay. You're capable. You can handle it. It's amazing how often neglect gets dressed up as confidence in you." I looked straight at him. "Fine isn't the same as untouched." He scoffed. My father cut in. "This has nothing to do with your car, does it?" "That was a stunt." "No," I said. "The car was a purchase. This is the truth. You just finally paid attention because the purchase scared you." My mother's eyes filled with tears almost instantly, like she was racing to occupy the victim position before I could finish the sentence. "We did the best we could." I turned to her. "No, Mom. You did what felt most emotionally rewarding. You invested in the child who made you feel needed and assumed the other one would cope. That is not fair." "It's accurate." Ryan laughed under his breath. You're jealous. The room got very quiet. I don't know why that word hurt less than it used to. Maybe because by then I finally understood him. He couldn't imagine a world where someone would object to unfairness unless they secretly wanted a spotlight. That's what happens when a family trains one person to see support as entitlement. Jealous, I said. Of what? Being 30 and still needing mom and dad to subsidize your life? Of building an identity so fragile, everyone around you has to pay to maintain it. His face changed. Watch it, he said. No. You watch it. Do you know how many years I believed I was asking for too much just because I wanted the opportunities that were already meant for me? Do you know how many nights I worked until 2 a.m. because I thought nobody had the capacity to help me? Meanwhile, you were getting checks because you were stressed about content. My father's jaw tightened. This conversation is getting out of hand. No. It's finally getting honest. I handed him the summary sheet my attorney had helped me prepare. He looked at the total and went pale. My mother saw the number and whispered, "Oh my God, just under $100,000. Almost the exact cost of a Tesla." Ryan noticed that too. So that's what this is. You bought the car to make some point. I held his gaze. I bought the car because I wanted it, and because I can afford it. The fact that the number mirrors what was taken is just the universe having better timing than I do. My father put the paper down carefully. What do you want? There it was. Not an apology. Not an explanation. A negotiation. I answered anyway. I want acknowledgement. I want repayment. I want every account, policy, document, and financial tie connected to my name reviewed and separated. And I want it understood clearly that I will never again be treated as the backup resource in this family. My mother shook her head. We don't have that kind of money lying around. And yet somehow you found it for him for years. That was different. Why? Because he needed help. I laughed once without humor. Thank you. That's exactly it. You only recognize need when it comes packaged as dependency. Ryan stood up. I'm not sitting here while she acts like I'm some parasite. Then don't, I said. He stared at me. I stared back. For the first time in our lives, I didn't soften. I didn't redirect. I didn't let him be the emotional center of the room. He sat back down. My father rubbed his temples. There were things you didn't understand. Then make me understand why my name was attached to a loan I didn't fully authorize. That hit him hard. I placed another document on the table. His expression told me all I needed to know before he even read it. Years earlier, when I was barely 19, my father had me sign what he described as paperwork related to my first car. I trusted him. I signed. I later learned one of those forms had been tied to a personal credit instrument used for a business-related expense connected to Ryan. Payments had been made, yes. My credit had not been destroyed, yes. But that wasn't the point. They had used my clean financial identity because it was convenient. My mother put a hand over her mouth. Ryan looked genuinely confused, which told me even he hadn't known all of it. It was temporary, my father said. It was deceptive. We never missed a payment. You still used me. His voice rose. Everything we did was for this family. No. Everything you did was to preserve the family structure you liked best. He stood. So did I. And maybe that was the real turning point. Not the car. Not the folder. Not even the money. The turning point was that I stood up and didn't shrink. I said very clearly, you taught him that being needy made him valuable, and you taught me that being dependable made me disposable. I am not participating in that anymore. My mother started crying in earnest then. How can you say we don't love you? I didn't say you don't love me. I said your love came with assumptions that hurt me. Ryan muttered, "This is unbelievable." I turned to him. Is it? Let me ask you something. If you found out money set aside for you had been redirected to me for years, without your knowledge, would you be calm right now? He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. Exactly. My father sat back down heavily, suddenly older than he had looked an hour earlier. You're making us sound monstrous. No, I said. I'm making you sound accountable. For the next 40 minutes the conversation went in circles the way family confrontations do when truth is finally in the room. They reminded me of everything they had ever done right. Every school pickup, every birthday party when I was a child, every Christmas gift, every time they had shown up. And I did not deny any of it. That's the trap, isn't it? People think if someone loved you sometimes, then the ways they hurt you must not count. But both things can be true. Someone can care about you and still exploit your competence. Someone can love you and still fail you in ways that shape your whole life. I kept bringing it back. The fund, the transfers, the messages, the loan, the pattern. Finally, my father asked in a tired voice, "If we agree to repay this over time, what then?" "Then maybe there is a path forward," I said. "Not back to normal. Forward. And if we don't, then you'll still be my relatives. But you won't have access to me the way you do now." My mother looked up sharply. "You'd cut off your family over money." "No," I said. "I'd create distance over betrayal." She cried harder. For years that would have undone me. Seeing her cry used to make me instantly doubt myself, like maybe I had been too harsh, too cold, too ambitious, too something. But that day I just felt sad. Sad for her. Sad for me. Sad for the entire stupid system we had all been living inside. Ryan finally said, "So what? Now I'm the villain because Mom and Dad believed in me?" I looked at him for a long moment. "No, you're not the villain because they supported you. You're the villain if you hear all of this and still think you were entitled to it." That shut him up. Silence settled over the room. Then my father said, very quietly, "We need time." I nodded. "Take it." I gathered the documents back into the folder, leaving the summary sheet on the table. Then I said the part one had practiced the night before. "I've already removed shared access from my accounts. Your email has been taken off my insurance and financial notices. Any accounts tied to my name are being reviewed. If repayment doesn't happen, I will decide later whether legal action makes sense. But regardless, the emotional arrangement we've had until now is over." My mother whispered, "Claire, please." I picked up my bag. "No more calling me only when something about my life alarms you. No more assuming I'll smooth things over. No more treating my strength like a free utility." My father said my name once, the way he used to when I was younger, and he expected me to stop immediately. I didn't stop. I walked out. The Texas heat hit me like a wall. The Tesla sat in the driveway gleaming under the sun, absurd and beautiful, and suddenly much less like revenge than freedom. I got in, shut the door, and just sat there. Silence. Air conditioning. My own breathing. For the first time in years, I felt like I had left a room without leaving myself behind in it. I wish I could tell you everything changed right away. It didn't. For weeks, my mother sent long emotional messages about misunderstanding and family pain and how hurt she was that I had been so harsh. My father sent shorter, more practical ones asking for time, asking for space, asking me not to escalate. Ryan posted vague things online about envy, betrayal, and people who hate seeing creatives win. I didn't respond to most of it. That was new for me too. When you're used to over-functioning, silence feels almost immoral at first. But boundaries are strange. In the beginning they feel cruel. Then, little by little, they start to feel clean. I kept going to work. I kept living my life. I drove a Tesla. I made dinner with friends. I met with my attorney again. I updated beneficiaries, passwords, emergency contacts, everything. And the more I did that, the more obvious it became that the confrontation hadn't destroyed my life. It had stabilized it. 3 months later, my father called. I almost didn't answer. But I did. His voice sounded different. Thinner somehow. "We sold the lake house," he said. I said nothing. "And liquidated some investments." Still nothing. "You should have received the first transfer." I opened my laptop and checked. There it was. A wire transfer, larger than I expected, marked clearly and formally. An email followed with documentation for a repayment schedule covering the full amount they had taken from the education fund and related transfers. Not every questionable thing had been resolved, but the major part had. I sat back slowly. My father went on. "Your mother didn't take it well. Neither did Ryan." "What about Ryan?" "He moved back home." I closed my eyes for a second. "He's working part-time now. Production support for a media company. He's angry. He'll survive." A long pause. Then my father said, "You were right about one thing." "Only one." He almost laughed. "Almost. We did turn your competence into an excuse. We told ourselves you were fine, and we stopped asking what it cost you to be fine." That was the closest thing to honesty I had ever heard from him. I'm not ready to pretend everything is okay, I said. I know. I'm not coming home for the holidays just because money moved. I know. Another silence. Then he said quietly, I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you that fixed something instantly. It didn't. Real damage doesn't dissolve because the right sentence finally arrives. But it mattered. Not because it healed everything. Because it named it. That winter, I spent Christmas in Seattle. I cooked for myself and 2 friends who also had complicated families. We wore socks, opened cheap gifts, drank good wine, and watched terrible movies. At one point I looked around the room and realized peace doesn't always arrive looking grand. Sometimes it just looks like being somewhere you're not required to disappear. A month later, my mother sent me a handwritten note. Not a manipulative one. Not a guilt note. Just a note. She wrote that she had spent years believing love meant rushing to the loudest need in the room. She wrote that she didn't understand until now how often quiet children get overlooked because they make survival look easy. She wrote that she was trying to learn the difference between admiration and neglect. I cried when I read that, not because everything was fixed, because she had finally said something true. Ryan took longer. Of course he did. When a family builds someone into the center, it feels like cruelty to them when the room is rearranged. He sent one text months later that simply said, I didn't realize how much they were covering. I'm figuring it out. It wasn't an apology, but it was the first adult sentence I had ever received from him. I replied, Good. That was enough. These days, when I drive my Tesla, I don't think about proving anything. At first, I won't lie, it felt symbolic. It felt sharp. It felt like a mirror held up to everyone who had underestimated me. Now it just feels like mine. And that matters more. Because this story was never really about a car. It was about what happens in families when one child becomes the investment and another becomes the insurance policy. It was about the quiet daughter, the capable daughter, the one who makes herself easy to love because she's terrified of becoming inconvenient. It was about realizing that if people only value your strength when it benefits them, that isn't love in its healthiest form. It may still be love. Families are messy. But it isn't care you can safely build your life around. If you are the strong one in your family, listen to me carefully. Being strong does not make you less deserving. Being reliable does not make your pain smaller. Being successful does not erase what it cost you to get there. And being fine is not the same as being treated fairly. You do not have to wait until you are falling apart for your needs to matter. You do not have to become dramatic just to be visible. And you do not owe endless access to people who only notice you when your independence stops being convenient for them. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not scream, not punish, not revenge shop, not burn every bridge. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is gather the truth, say it plainly, and refuse to play your assigned role one more day. That was the real turning point for me. Not the screenshot, not the family meeting, not even the repayment. It was the moment I understood that peace was going to cost me my old identity in that family, and I chose peace anyway. So no, the Tesla didn't save me. But it did mark the day I stopped apologizing for the life I built without their help. And honestly, that was worth every penny.